Before there were kings or curses or revolutions, there was a girl who learned to walk upright 3 million years before anyone built a throne to sit on. Tonight, how we actually got from there to civilization. Let's go back in time and see what happened. East Africa, roughly 3.2 million years ago. A small, upright figure moves between the trees and the open grassland, and everything about the way she walks is about to rewrite what we thought we knew about becoming human. On November 24, 1974, paleoanthropologist Donald Johanson and his student Tom Gray were surveying a dry riverbed in Hadar, Ethiopia, when Johanson spotted a forearm bone that looked distinctly hominin. Over the following weeks, the team recovered several hundred bone fragments, roughly 40% of a single skeleton, an almost unheard-of level of completeness for a fossil this old. That night, back at camp, the Beatles' song "Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds" was playing on repeat. The skeleton got its name by accident. Lucy belonged to a species called Australopithecus afarensis, and before her discovery, most scientists assumed our ancestors developed large brains first and only later evolved the ability to walk upright. That intelligence came before locomotion. Lucy's skeleton proved the opposite. Her pelvis and leg bones showed clear, unmistakable adaptations for walking fully upright on two legs, while her skull remained small and ape-like, with a brain roughly the size of a chimpanzee's. Bipedalism came first. Big brains came over 2 million years later. That single reordering, confirmed further by a set of fossilized footprints found nearby at Laetoli in Tanzania, forced an entire rewrite of the human evolutionary timeline. Here's the detail that surprises people most. Lucy wasn't fully committed to life on the ground. A 2016 study using micro-CT scans of her arm bones found evidence of exceptional upper body strength, consistent with regular tree climbing, swinging and hauling herself up branches, likely for safety at night or to reach food. Lucy represents a genuine evolutionary in-between, a creature walking upright through the grass by day, while keeping one foot, quite literally, still in the branches. She stood barely 3.5 feet tall and died around age 12 to 15 based on later bone analysis, possibly from a fall out of a tree, according to one contested 2016 study. Whatever killed her, what she left behind became the single most important skeleton in the story of how any of us came to walk at all. Nearly 2 million years after Lucy, a different hominin species made a discovery that would change not just behavior, but human biology itself, from the inside out. Homo erectus emerges in the fossil record around 1.9 million years ago, taller, more heavily built, and armed with a genuinely sophisticated stone tool tradition known as Acheulean technology. Teardrop-shaped hand axes far more refined than anything that came before. But the more significant development, one researchers are still actively dating and debating, is control of fire. At Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa, archaeologists have identified burned bone fragments and ash residue dating back roughly 1 million years. Among the oldest, strong evidence of controlled fire use anywhere in the world. This wasn't an accident of a wildfire passing through. The burn patterns are concentrated deep inside the cave in a location wildfire simply couldn't reach on its own. Cooking food does something remarkable to digestion. It breaks down proteins and starches before they ever reach the stomach, meaning the body spends dramatically less energy extracting nutrition from a meal. Primatologist Richard Wrangham's widely cited cooking hypothesis argues that this energy surplus is directly connected to the substantial brain growth seen in Homo erectus compared to earlier hominins, brains being extraordinarily energy-expensive organs to run. Fire changed more than metabolism. A fire at the mouth of a cave or camp extended usable daylight hours into the night, provided protection from predators that had hunted hominins for millions of years, and, perhaps most significantly for everything that followed, gave early humans a reason to sit still together after dark, with nothing to do but exist in each other's company. Some anthropologists argue this nightly gathering around a shared flame is where the earliest seeds of storytelling and eventually language itself first took root. Fire gave early humans a reason to gather after dark. What they eventually did with that time together changed what it meant to be human at all. In December 1994, 3 explorers in southern France's Ardèche region pushed through a narrow gap in a cliff face and found a cave sealed by a rockfall for tens of thousands of years. Its walls covered in over 1,000 paintings and engravings, astonishingly well preserved. Radiocarbon dating on charcoal from the paintings themselves put the oldest layer at roughly 36,000 years old, more than twice the age of any comparable cave art known at the time. The Chauvet paintings aren't crude outlines. They show shading, layered perspective, and animals rendered mid-motion with genuine anatomical accuracy, technical sophistication that forced researchers to radically revise how early they believed complex imagination and artistic skill had developed in humans. This wasn't decoration. Researchers who've studied the cave extensively believe it was never lived in. It appears to have been visited specifically, repeatedly, for what looks like ceremonial or spiritual purposes. Symbolic thinking, the capacity to let one thing represent another, a painted lion standing in for the real, dangerous animal outside the cave, is widely considered one of the defining cognitive leaps separating fully modern human behavior from everything that came before it. It's the same mental capacity underlying language itself, a sound or a mark on a wall standing in for something it isn't. Here's where the story gets more complicated and more interesting. In 2018, a team dating cave paintings at 3 separate sites in Spain, using more advanced uranium-thorium techniques, found art at least 64,000 years old, created at least 20,000 years before Homo sapiens ever set foot in Europe. The only species that could have painted it was Neanderthal. For over a century, symbolic art was treated as proof of modern humans' unique cognitive superiority, the thing that separated us from every other human species that ever existed. That single Spanish discovery quietly demolished the cleanest version of that story. Whatever it actually means to think symbolically, to gather deliberately in the dark, and make meaning out of ochre and stone, we now know we weren't the only ones who ever figured out how to do it. For most of human history, Homo sapiens was not alone on this planet. We shared it with other, genuinely separate species of humans, and every single one of them is gone now. What actually happened to them is still being pieced together. Homo neanderthalensis, the Neanderthals, lived across Europe and Western Asia for over 300,000 years, with brains, on average, slightly larger than our own. Sophisticated tools, evidence of controlled fire, and even deliberate burial of their dead. They were not the hunched, dim-witted caricature popular culture spent a century building. They were a genuinely successful, cold-adapted human species. And roughly 40,000 years ago, after millennia of coexisting, and in some cases, directly encountering modern humans, they vanished. Here's what modern genetics has revealed, and it complicates the word extinction considerably. Nearly everyone alive today whose ancestry traces outside Africa carries measurable Neanderthal DNA, and researchers estimate that across the whole modern human population, at least a fifth of the entire Neanderthal genome survives, scattered in fragments inside us. One 2022 study went further, proposing that regular interbreeding between the two populations may have gradually pulled Neanderthals into the much larger Homo sapiens gene pool until there simply weren't enough genetically distinct Neanderthals left to call a separate species, extinction less through violence and more through absorption. Other theories point to more direct competition. Sophisticated numerical modeling published in recent years suggests modern humans may have simply been more efficient at extracting food from a harsh, resource-scarce Ice Age landscape, slowly out-competing Neanderthal populations in the same territory without a single battle ever being fought. Disease is another serious candidate. Two populations separated for hundreds of thousands of years, meeting again and exchanging pathogens neither had immunity to. And Neanderthals' famous cold weather specialization may have become a liability of its own once the climate began swinging rapidly during the last Ice Age, punishing a species too well adapted to conditions that no longer reliably existed. Neanderthals aren't even the only relative we lost. In a cave in Siberia, a single finger bone and a few teeth revealed an entirely separate human species, now called the Denisovans, known to science almost exclusively through DNA rather than a substantial fossil record. Their genetic legacy persists today primarily in Southeast Asia and Oceania, including specific gene variants that help modern populations in the Himalayas survive at extreme high altitude. A direct, practical gift from a species we otherwise know almost nothing about. So why did Homo sapiens alone make it to the world we live in now? The honest answer is that no single theory fully explains it. It was very likely some combination of all of them. Interbreeding, disease, competition, and sheer adaptability. And what's left of our closest relatives isn't really absence. It's scattered directly inside the DNA of nearly every person watching this right now. Our final stop overturns one of the most basic assumptions in the entire story of civilization: the belief that farming came first and religion followed once people had the free time to invent it. Discovered in the 1990s in southeastern Turkey and excavated for decades under archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, Göbekli Tepe consists of massive T-shaped limestone pillars, some standing over 6 meters tall, arranged in large circular and oval enclosures. Monumental architecture dating back roughly 11,600 years, predating Stonehenge by 6,000 years and the Egyptian pyramids by 7,500. And here's the detail that shook the field of archaeology to its core. There's no evidence of farming anywhere at the site. No domesticated crops, no livestock pens, no permanent houses, no cooking hearths associated with settled life. Only wild cereal processing and over 100,000 butchered wild animal bones. The remains, researchers believe, of massive feasts. Göbekli Tepe was built entirely by hunter-gatherers, people who had no fixed home, coordinating labor on a scale previously assumed to require settled agricultural society and centralized leadership, neither of which existed yet. The pillars themselves are covered in detailed relief carvings: lions, snakes, boars, vultures, and scorpions, rendered with a level of craft remarkable for people working entirely without metal tools. Some archaeologists, including Schmidt himself, have proposed the site functioned as a gathering place tied to a cult of the dead, though no confirmed burials have yet been found beneath its floors. Radiocarbon dating shows that agriculture emerged in the surrounding region only a few centuries after Göbekli Tepe's monuments were raised, leading many archaeologists to a genuinely radical reversal of the old story. Rather than farming enabling religion and monumental building, it may have been the enormous labor and organization required to gather, feed, and coordinate the crowds building and visiting this temple that pushed nearby communities toward the more reliable food supply that only farming could provide. Ritual, in other words, may not be civilization's reward. It may be civilization's cause. Strangest of all, sometime after centuries of use, the people of Göbekli Tepe deliberately buried their own temple, filling the enclosures with rubble and soil. Why remains one of archaeology's open questions. And even now, only a small fraction of the site, estimates suggest as little as 5 to 10%, has actually been excavated. Most of humanity's oldest known temple is still sitting underground, waiting. A girl who learned to walk upright 3 million years before anyone needed a throne. A fire that may have given us language before it gave us cities. Paintings on a cave wall that turned out not to be uniquely ours at all. 2 lost cousins whose DNA still lives inside almost everyone watching this. And a temple built by people with no permanent home that may have talked humanity into settling down in the first place. Civilization wasn't a single invention. It was a 3 million year accident that somehow kept building on itself. Which part of this story you'd never heard before? And if you want the deep dive on any single piece of it, you can tell me in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.